Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Behind the Hype. I'm Ryan Clifford from Finastra. I'm very excited for today's session because it's slightly different to previous Behind the Hypes. So Behind the Hype is a meetup series that Finastra has been running for a good number of months, previously physically and now virtually for must be now 5 months going on. And what we do in Behind the Hype is take key topics in fintech and demystify them and look beyond the hype. Today's session is slightly different in that we're actually hearing from some fintech founders, and I'm very happy that we have reoccurring guests joining, like Lucy, which we'll introduce later on, and new guests like Tram Anh. But Shireen, I'll pass it over to you to introduce our speakers.
Thank you. Thanks, Ryan. Hello, everyone. So today we're really excited to have this Women in Fintech session. We have with us Tram Anh, who's the co-founder of CFTE, and Lucy for the second time, and we're really excited to have you with us. Lucy is the co-founder and COO of StepLadder. I would actually start by asking both of you to tell us a bit more about you and your companies. Tram Anh, do you want to start?
Yes, no, it's a great pleasure to be with all of you this afternoon. I'm Tram Anh Nguyen, and I'm the co-founder of CFT. We are the Center for Finance, Technology and Entrepreneurship. So just wanted to say hello to everyone. And before we start, thank you, Shireen and Ryan, for the kind invitation. And I must say, congratulations also to Shireen for your new role.
Thank you. Lucy, do you want to tell us a couple of words about you? Yeah.
Sure. Lovely to be back. My name's Lucy. I am the co-founder and chief operating officer of StepLadder, and we are helping people buy their first homes faster and better and with support. So, we're hearing lots at the moment about how hard it is to get on the property ladder. And for the last 3.5 years, StepLadder have been here as the friend to the first-time buyer. And I'm really proud that we help our members on every step of that property journey, from raising their deposit and getting their finances in order through to putting the keys into their front door.
Just to quickly jump in there, because you've congratulated Shireen on her new role. She's now head of innovation at Finastra, just for context there. And before we jump into the questions, I just want to let the audience know that at any point you can ask a question or pop a thought in using the comments button down below on whatever platform you're watching, and we'll have plenty of time at the end to cover those questions, but we may weave in your questions a little bit earlier as we run through a list. And Shireen's going to kick us off actually with the first question.
Yeah, so actually the first question for you is maybe to tell us a bit more about your roles and what they actually encompass, which cannot be that clear for everyone from a fintech or a startup perspective.
Yes, no, thanks for asking. So my role, I'm the co-founder of CFT, so I set it up. So I build a CFT, and CFT, we are the largest platform of education in digital finance and in fintech. So what we do is that we're providing education at scale for people in finance, people who are in technology, people who are entrepreneurs, to understand more about this new world of finance and, of course, fintech. My role is quite diverse. Started it, building up a university from scratch, so from the beginning. So pretty much from a white, board. How do you make sure that you can basically get, a lot of people to know about you? And so it's we are two co-founders, but I'll share a little bit more perhaps how did I start the company. But my role is quite diverse, which is very much taking care of making sure that we travel all around the world to find the best industry experts, making sure as well that we engage with government, with organizations, with policymakers, with individuals, to make sure that we can change the way we educate adults today, because it's not obvious. It is not something that a lot of people were talking about before, because the university and the industry of university was probably much more educating students. But adults, educating adults, very different. And because the world of finance is really transforming, we are just bridging that gap. So my role is very much taking care of all this.
Sounds great. So making sure it's all working. That's cool. Lucy, do you want to tell us a bit more about your role?
Yeah, I'd love to. So turns out being a co-founder, you actually do a little bit of everything. It's a team of 12 now. We've just recently grown a little bit. So actually feels like a big team now of 12, but obviously contextually that's quite small. So we had a few people away last week, so we were down to 9 people. And one of my favorite things in StepLadder is what I started doing when it was just my co-founder and I in the office. I started on the phone. So Matt raised the money and had this brilliant idea for StepLadder, and he said we need to tell people about it and kind of get some feedback. So my very first job at StepLadder 3 years ago, when I became a co-founder, was talking to members of the public about what we were doing. And so I lived that again last week, and I love that. I love getting on the phones and talking to members. So members find us on Facebook or Instagram, and they want to know, well, how does this work and how can we trust you? Because sometimes they read our adverts and it sounds a bit too good to be true. Raise your property deposit faster and work together with a community of people. And people think, well, it sounds good, but how can I trust this? And a lot of work the membership team do on the phones is to get people comfortable with that. So sometimes I'm on the phone chatting to people. Sometimes people want to tell their story, which is great. So I spend time talking to our members saying, how can we tell your story to inspire other people to join StepLadder? I'm doing some fundraising at the moment, keeping the team fulfilled with everything they need. So in my other life, I'm a coach. And so I like to spend time with the team, making sure that they can grow and develop. As I said, we've just recruited 3 new people, so there's some recruitment. So basically, for anyone listening, you're thinking, what on earth does a chief operating officer or a co-founder do? Basically everything. The only thing I don't do, and it's only because my co-founder Matt is so good at this, I have done this in previous jobs, is the accounts. Matt is very good at doing the accounts. So he'll ring me once a month and say, oh, there's something gone through for £9.67. What's that? Have you got a receipt somewhere? So that's about as involved as the accounting as I get. But otherwise, pretty much anything that happens in the business, from kind of motivating the team, dealing with customer complaints, sorting out Trustpilot, I don't make anything look pretty in terms of our social media, but sometimes I come up with little marketing ideas. It's one of those things with a startup where I think you have to just roll up your sleeves and do everything, and it's something that I really love because I think I get bored if I did one thing all the time.
Just as you were saying that, I came across a post yesterday where it's from a CFO of a startup saying how they were involved with some creative campaigns. I was like, oh, that's really interesting. An accountant doing creative campaigns for marketing. And I think that illustrates your point. You do kind of everything. Tram Anh, was you just about to add something?
Yes, no, we are, as Lucy said, we've grown a lot as well. We are still young. We are 3 years and a half. We are around 25 to 30 people around the world. As I said to Sherin and Ryan the other day, is that I don't know where my teams are anymore. They're everywhere around the world because we used to have, our main, team now based in London at level 39, where we had our CFT campus based in London. We also have team in Singapore, team in Hong Kong, offices, spread out everywhere. But since, COVID happened, before, just the lockdown, we actually ask our team, please, this lockdown will be different. And what I would love is for you to get the chance for you to perhaps go home, be with your family, or be in a place where you feel probably comfortable during this lockdown. And so some of them travel back to France, some of them travel back to Malaysia, some of them are in Hong Kong. So now we have not only be in London, but I'm not quite sure where they are. They're in Spain, and so it's very fascinating how this has transformed CFT a lot. So we've done a lot now. We are not physically meeting, but we are all online, working together, putting our sleeves up. There's been quite a lot of things happening during this lockdown. It's been a journey. We have alumni all around the world, 130 countries, and very much being this education platform who has transformed a lot over the past few months.
Building upon the last question, I just want to kind of dive into how did you start the company and what was your background, I guess, before and then going into the kind of new company. If we start with Tram Anh, then we'll go to Lucy.
Yes, no, thanks, Ryan, for asking. I think education was not my world. My world is traditional finance. So I studied in New York and moved to London. I'm French. I don't know if you can see from my accent, but I'm also French, originally from Vietnam. And I started my journey in France, but I moved very quickly, studied in London, moved my first job in New York. I was a trader working back in the 2000. I was a trader in emerging market, working for Standard Chartered, and I moved to London, and it was supposed for 1 year, and I ended up 18 years in London. Love to be in London, and I went to Dresdner, so still in capital markets, but more on the sales role, not a trader anymore. And very quickly, I realized that I wanted to do something else, so I joined UBS Private Banking back in 2006, where I was in charge of ultra high net worth clients from Asia. And I decided to quit banking a couple of years ago to set up my own. And this is where I really realized that being out from the finance industry, that I was confronted with something that was completely new to me, fintech. I was blown away. Of course, being very close to my co-founder, who happened to be my husband as well. And he basically was very involved in fintech for many years. But me being in finance and him into fintech, I said, this is your world, this is my world. But then I was confronted with something that was very disruptive for me at that time. And I travel with him, meet a lot of CEOs of fintech in Asia a lot. And in 2016, I was invited to attend the Singapore Fintech Festival. I was blown away. I was listening, 12,000 people to attend a fintech festival. I said, oh, what's happening? I mean, I hear about APIs, cloud computing, machine learning, AI. For me, it was purely technology, nothing to do with finance. I couldn't link the two together. And it's by listening to Hui on stage at the festival, and he was sharing about fintech. He was sharing about the lack of people understanding finance and technology. And of course, we also talked about this with Peter Tufano, the Dean of Oxford. And he said, Peter, it's not normal today that the people that I hire at Citi don't understand. They don't understand technology. So I was thinking, so we started to do the first workshop, the first lecture. He was also involved in the first MOOC at the FinTech MOOC at Oxford. And he said to me, Chaman, do you want to come with me? I took my backpack and I went to study at Oxford. I couldn't resist, that was a totally new world to me. And by listening to Hui on stage in 2016, I said, no, you know what? It's great to have, what you're doing at Oxford. It's great what you're doing for Imperial College. But why don't we solve this massive problem, which is there are millions of people who will be left behind if they don't understand what's happening in finance. We must build something. So today, CFTE is that. It's very much, so that's why that drove me to set up this with Hui. And it's an edtech platform to allow today, hopefully, millions of people to access good knowledge in digital finance. And our mission is very much to provide education at scale to professionals in finance, technologies, entrepreneurs. And what is important to me is not a lot of people can afford getting into great university today. We see it even at with today's world. And for me, if I have to resume, is that we don't have the means to stop you to your job at work. You don't have. You can still continue having your job and learn and upskill yourself. Who can learn online alone? Not a lot. Learning from industry experts around the world is not given. So this is what we are trying to solve at CFTE. And so our mission very much accessible knowledge to everyone, be in Vietnam, Cambodia, Malaysia, India, US, and of course the UK.
I think something that just resonates as well with me is the fact that finance and fintech and technology in general is just moving so fast that traditional educational platforms like university operate just a bit slower. And I've had lecturers before who've come from industry and they just bring their stories and they really bring it to life. So I love that element of CFTE.
Yes, and one thing that's why I accepted also, and thanks very much, Shirin and Ryan, but I must say something. 45% of our learners are women. So I think what I really want to say is that because this is the woman in fintech, platform, is that this industry, and we'll discuss more, but this is something that for me is very much accessible knowledge to everyone, but also for those who never would have contemplated a journey into fintech.
We'll definitely touch back on that point a bit later. Moving over to Lucy. So to my knowledge, your co-founder is not your husband, unless something's changed. But what was, I guess, your background, your story to being involved with StepLadder?
So I think to the point that Tram Anh just made, I'd never contemplated a career in fintech. In fact, well, let's be honest, fintech didn't exist when I was thinking about what am I going to do with my life. My first job was my best job, age 15. And actually, I've almost come full circle, ready for my big birthday next year, which I won't tell you which one it is, but it feels kind of significant that approaching my big birthday next year and 20 or so years of working, I'm kind of back to doing what I was in a different way. So let me tell you what it was. My first job when I was 15 is I was a fitness and aerobics instructor. And I couldn't wait to learn to drive because I ran aerobics classes in the village hall opposite my house. And then as soon as I learned to drive and passed my test, I drove around all the villages, little villages in Oxfordshire every night of the week. And I was running fitness classes. So even though I would never have described myself as entrepreneurial or kind of risk taking, I clearly was. That was when I look back, I'm like, that's quite entrepreneurial. I actually made quite good money driving around, and it was £5 back in the day to do an aerobics class. And you think, well, what on earth has that got to do with buying your first home? But actually, it's all of the things I love and that I think I do well, which is energizing people, inspiring people, making people get up and move around, and helping people get on the property ladder is the same. It's like, get up, do something, start putting money aside, reach your goals. And it's interesting when I get asked questions like this on panels, because I did have this foray into banking because I thought that was a proper job. I left university. I thought, well, I better get a proper job. And I went into banking and I hated it. Spent a few years there and then moved on to do some other work, which was interesting in education and finance. But again, for me, it was a proper job and I had to be very serious. And what's lovely about having found StepLadder and the work I do there is I can really be myself. So I bring to my work all of the coaching, all of the cheerleading, all of the engaging with people that I was doing when I was 15. And now it's really nice to be doing it in fintech world, even though if you told the 15-year-old Lucy, you're going to be working in fintech, I'll be like, well, I didn't like IT class at school and I'm not really that interested in finance. So I think that's a big message, I think, for anyone listening that's thinking, well, or got children at school thinking, oh, I like fintech, that's not for me. And I think this is really important for particularly young women, is you might think, well, that's not for me. And you're maybe not pushed into that route, or IT class or tech class isn't that exciting. Actually, you can bring all the skills and superpowers that you have into this world and it's not boring at all. But the 15-year-old Lucy would have said, oh my gosh, that sounds thoroughly boring working in fintech. But it's really not. When you've got the right mission and the right purpose to the company that you are in, it's thoroughly exciting and it will make you want to get out of bed every day, which I think is really what everyone's looking for. It's not really about the money. Once you've got a reason to get out of bed and you like what you do, the money will follow.
Thanks a lot, Lucy. That's so inspiring. Can you tell us a bit more about how you got into StepLadder? How did you met your co-founder? And also, as you founded StepLadder, what was the skills that you were looking for into your co-founder and also into the maybe larger founding team?
Yes. So I was super lucky. Actually, I did an MBA at Oxford University under Peter Tufano. So we've got a little connection there, Tram Anh. I didn't know that about you. So in 2011-12, I was lucky enough to get sponsored through my job and do an executive MBA while I was working. And it was a huge eye-opener to me. I didn't choose to do it. My boss said, oh, you should do this. We'd like to sponsor you. And I thought, what do I want to do that for? I just want to go to the gym and, a very sort of narrow view of the world back then. Anyway, I did this MBA and it really opened my eyes up to the world. And it's actually how I ended up meeting Matt, who's the original founder of StepLadder, and he's the brains behind how StepLadder works. He's come up with the whole idea of the product. So I met him through a mutual friend from my MBA. And that's what a lot of people told me about the MBA. They said, it's not really that you'll learn anything you couldn't read online or read in a book. It's the people you meet. And to this day, you know, I'm still very closely connected to at least 40 of the people who were on that MBA course all around the world in all different industries. And without fail, if I need something, they will connect me to somebody, and likewise, I do the same for them. So that's how I met Matt. Matt had studied the model that we use at StepLadder, which is called a ROSCA. So it's a rotating savings and credit association. And they've been used all around the world for hundreds of years. And it's a form of community borrowing and lending. So you get together in what we call at StepLadder a circle. But in different countries around the world, it's known as different things. So, for example, in Jamaica, it's known as a partner. In Nigeria, it's known as an ajo. In China, it's known as a hui. In India, it's known as a chit fund. I could go on. There are about 180 names for these saving and lending circles. And so very simply, what we do is we get, say, 10 people together. Everybody puts in £500 each month for 10 months. And so each month, the group have got £5,000 between them. And each month, somebody takes it in turns to receive that pot of money. So 9 out of 10 people get that £5,000 faster than if everybody had saved on their own and it had taken 10 months. That's the underlying, what I call it, the underlying genius of StepLadder. And that's all come out of Matt's head from studying this around the world and then turning it into a financial product that we could get regulated over here in the UK and actually utilize to really help people, because traditionally people have only come together with people they know. But in the day and age we live in, it's not necessarily that you're going to know 9 or 19 other people that can all save the same amount of money over the same time period. That doesn't really happen anymore. So we've set up these ROSCAs where you can save and borrow and lend with other people who you don't know, but in a way which is safer. And we help you do that. So yes, that's how I met Matt. And I know that what he was looking for in his co-founder was somebody that wanted to come onto events like this and talk. Matt's an introvert. If he's listening now, he'll have a spreadsheet open in front of him and he'll be doing something in a spreadsheet. And that's where he's happy. I'm very happy in situations like this. So we really complement each other well. And then as we go on and look for other people, we're constantly looking for what's missing in the team, always looking for, you want that ultimate diversity across every element of diversity. So we're always looking for what's missing.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Tram Anh, do you want to share with us your perspective to that? Like, we know that your co-founder is your husband, and maybe you don't want to share how you met. We won't go there, but maybe in terms of skill set, how do you complement each other's, and how did you also recruit your first partners at CFTE?
Yes, no, thanks, Sherin. I think it was the obvious for me perfect match for CFTE. Why? Because Hui was also, when I started, Hui was also starting his own business. He was the CEO of the Disruptive Group, so a business builder in Fintech. So he was involved in launching a bank. He was involved in already a lot of the programs at Oxford, at Imperial College, so very much in education. For myself, I left the banking world for quite a while, and I was setting up my own, and I was investing into education and also a lot in edtech. So when I listened to him, I said, it was the obvious that it has to be Hui building up CFT with me, because we had so much, we wanted to do this as a side project, and it becomes much bigger than, of course, I'm happy, but it was just a side business for Hui. But then it grew more, and we're very happy with the project that we have. And I think we saw that huge gap coming up. And today, what I think Hui today, and I think it speaks very well. Today he's in Paris. he's actually setting up 3 programs at the same time. So he's always really, taking care of the production, making sure that we launch, very, very good programs with excellent experts around the world, and making sure that it has a huge impact for the people, for them to find opportunities. For me, I have a role where also I talk to clients. I also travel all around the world to meet with experts, to meet with organizations, to meet with policymakers, with government. And I love spending time with alumni. Now, after 3 years and a half, we have lots of alumni, and I'm always very, very pleased when I meet with them and see their transformation. It's not easy to see that transformation. And last year, I can't say this year, unfortunately, but last year when I was traveling, I travel everywhere around the world, but just before the lockdown, I was in Hungary, where I give certificate to groups of people and the Central Bank of Hungary who had well-deserved received a certificate. And when I see the transformation of their role and the title of their job, they're all into jobs of the future. And for me, it's very satisfying. When you see that, there's a lot of fulfillment, a lot of satisfaction to say that we are transforming people that are very traditional to new jobs of tomorrow, and we can inspire people. So this is what we do. We are very different. Of course, like Lucy said, we are very complementary. Who is much more, he's a tech entrepreneur. So he used to be setting up, he used to be an entrepreneur before finance. So he knows, the challenge of being an entrepreneur. For me, I also have my set of experience being an entrepreneur, but for him, he's bringing his set of processes, technology, also background in finance. But for me, it's probably relationship, also going a lot and talking with policymakers and all of this. And for now, we are growing as a team, as an execution team, management team. We are having board people with different type of background from everywhere around the world. And we have people from tech background, business people. But what we are looking for today, if someone is listening and are looking for a position, we are 6 and we are growing the management team. But we are looking for someone who could help us to grow, the growth mindset. How do you scale CFT to bigger? And the growth mindset is on the B2C side. So we are looking for someone on the management to help us grow on that side. But as Lucy said, I think when you build your company, being founder is not simple. Is not simple. Founding alone is very hard. And I think that it has to complement. You have to share one thing in common, where you are looking for a great management team to share the same vision and mission and to complement yourself with the skills you don't have. You cannot do alone. But with a lot of different people, we can be a team and we build. So always looking for great people who can complement yourself.
Just going back to a topic that we raised a little bit earlier around female empowerment, both of you are, well, actually all 3 of you are amazing females in fintech. Do you have any stories that you want to share, maybe challenges that you had to overcome, or any positive experience being, a female in this industry? I could direct this to anyone, but let's go Lucy first, and then we'll go to Tram Anh. Gives you a chance to think.
Look, I've been extremely lucky, and I've spoken on this topic quite a few times. As a female working in finance, technology, and property, you're sort of in demand for talking about being a female in these industries. And I find it a little bit difficult because really, I'm really privileged. I'm really lucky to have a brilliant education and amazing support. And actually, my first 2 jobs, so my job at HSBC, I was the only female relationship manager in the corporate relationship center with 25 guys. And I've got a funny story. I'll tell you about that in a minute. But it was never a problem. I was never held back by that. I think I'm lucky that I have, I think this is something that's really helped me, is I have a naturally quite outgoing, quite confident personality. And so I can see how somebody who maybe wasn't as confident, was a bit quieter, might have been a bit overwhelmed by that environment. But I love football. I was frequently at White Hart Lane back in the day when we were allowed to go. And so I could engage in all the football banter, and I've always been one of the boys. And so it was very easy for me. So I don't really, I don't have any stories, but I can see how it could be hard in that environment. And then I moved to Oxford University and I ran a research institute there. And we had 8 senior professors, and every single one of them was white, male who was over 50. So that lovely stale pale male, although none of them were, and if any of them are listening, you're all wonderful, and they were all incredibly smart, and I loved working with them. And again, they were all wonderful. And actually my positive story here is one of the most famous professors at Oxford University who moved across to Harvard. He was my sort of direct boss, and I worked hand in hand with him. We had an executive committee meeting, so 8 senior professors at Oxford and myself, and we were all equal on that panel, but it was in our building and I was organising it. So I sort of got up and I started pouring coffee for people, and he grabbed me and he said, Lucy, come outside. I was like, okay, well, what do you want? He said, never, ever, ever pick up a coffee pot or a teapot in a meeting again. Just don't do it. And I was like, well, why? I'm just being a hostess. It's just polite. He was like, you're the only woman in the room. You're the youngest person in the room. You absolutely never do that. Let everybody else pour their own tea. And that happened to me 12 years ago, and it's absolutely stuck with me, because I think I now, looking back, realize how important that was. I didn't realize what message I was sending, because I just thought, oh, well, just make people tea. But so we have jokes about it in the office now. So I'll do anything, but I won't make tea for anyone. I mean, of course I do. It's a bit different when you've got a small office and you're the co-founder. It's different. But actually, what a great piece of advice in such an environment which could have been quite misogynistic and old-fashioned was actually marvelous. So Professor Neil Shepherd, you are a wonderful, wonderful man.
Just on that, I guess, tea story, I had someone who shared a story where they would never usually, when someone does the tea rounds, like, do you want a tea or coffee? They would kind of say, oh, no, I'm fine. And then someone said to them, do you know what? For the team to get to know you, maybe you should start saying yes, so that people start to remember you. Oh, you're blah blah who takes like 1 sugar and some milk with their tea, and that was their tip. And it really got me thinking, because I actually don't drink tea or coffee. So I'm like, I'm known as a person who doesn't drink it. So just a random story there that you made me think of. What about yourself, Tram Anh? Any challenges or positive stories overcoming anything, being a female or being particularly young, starting out?
Yes, no, lots of examples, but I will probably share only a few. But when I started, just way back 20 years ago, when I started my career in finance on the trading floor in New York, 2 decades ago, the sheer lack of women in the industry was so apparent. I was the only one, Asian, petite, no voice, have to shout on the trading floor, work hard and hard and hard. And it's not easy, because it's an industry that is like this. And but this experience, together with this desire now to make an impact, that prompted me now to support even more women in finance technology and even more in fintech space. And with CFT, now that I have the chance, to build up CFT, we look a profile to provide a significant better representation for those who sometimes often missing out on traditional finance education. So, we're trying to really encourage people to get into that sector. First, you're making sure that they have access to finance education and fintech education everywhere, from any background, helping women now to grow. And when I listen to, amazing, women's stories coming, I started with you, Chairman, 3 years ago, learning about fintech and learning about AI in finance, and then now getting into entrepreneurship program, and I'm making that move and slowly building up. And now I'm global head of innovation. That just make me very, very happy. And I want to continue. So it was not easy. No support at all when you are, a woman in an industry that is not supported, and it's not easy. So today, with what we are building at CFT, we want to transform that But what I'm trying to do with the whole team, and it's on, it's embedded in the CFT culture at CFT, and we have, the diversity, we want to make sure that we take special care to ensure that women can empower themselves. So I said, 45% of our CFT learners are women, which is for me astonishing, because when I was studying finance, we were very little to learn about this. And when you get into a job on a trading floor, there were none. So we're trying to encourage more and more, to make sure that there's this awareness of things, and to empower them also to grow, because learning is one thing, but making sure that they can also find opportunities and jobs. But what, and it's echo a little bit with what Lucy was saying, is that we spend miles, and I can't say I fly everywhere with my team, everywhere around the world, to find the best expert in fintech, in AI, in open banking. We're launching like lots of different programs. But what I found very difficult today is not easy to find women teachers, experts who wants to teach. They are very hard to find. They're hiding, and they're excellent, but they don't have a voice. They don't have the voice, we can't find them. So, of course, thanks to the fintech industry, and because there are quite, a lot of association that is helping women to have a voice, thanks to Finastra as well, to give them a choice, to be more visible. And this is what we are trying to do at CFT, and I'm trying hard. It's not easy. For the Artificial Intelligence in Finance program, my team spent 7,000 hours to do that program. We did a due diligence of over 241 experts, and it was very hard to find very good women because they were hiding. But we did, with a lot of work, but it's still a challenge. So, that's if something we can change today, give them more voice and more a platform where they can show their expertise and teach. Because that's important. And I have to say, one thing that was a struggle when I was working for a large organization, and I think it hasn't changed, is that being a mom, now I'm a mom of 3 young daughters, first child, you have your first child, you go back to the organization, and it's hard. You have your second child, and then you want to grow, and you push it down. After your third child, it looks like you have 10 years of gap. The industry and the organization is not recognizing the fact that being a mom and you want to grow in an organization, it's possible. It's challenging. It's challenging because policies are not in place. So it's really, today I want to say that female empowering is great, but I think it's fulfilling, but things need to change. And in the fintech industry, we will try as a founder to change this.
I think there's a great takeaway there. Just one that stood out is, I think everyone, if we can be advocates of others, so if I know of any females who are in AI and machine learning, to be actually to promote them and say, hey, have you even considered CFTE, that they might need someone to help build out this course? Because I think a lot of people don't have the confidence to be like, I'm an expert.
Please do.
Let me go and do it.
Please do.
So I'm ready.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Ryan, given that we are also live on LinkedIn, if we can ask everyone that is watching us to maybe tag someone, an expert, a female expert in fintech and AI and technology, that we can reach out to and give a voice, that would be great.
Thank you.
Just taking one of the questions from the audience, one that's popped up a few times, is, what are our thoughts on the future of fintech? And I'm going to open this up to both Tram Anh, Lucy, and Shireen, because I'd be really interested to hear all 3 of your perspectives. If any one thing stood out as the future of fintech for you personally in your career.
I can start. So I think the future of fintech, I think for me, fintech is time. It's finance for me. Fintech is technology impacting finance. So for me, the industry of finance is transforming big time. It's a huge transformation. You see this, it's testing. COVID-19 is just accelerating everything. If you think that, a couple of months ago, people were going to, a bank to get their cash very quickly when there were this COVID, you see that, fintech was there. Fintech was accelerating thing. Today, finance, and thanks to technology, people have access to finance. I mean, to tell you, we used to have branches. Some of the banks, I'm talking to CEOs now, they're saying, Tram Anh, I'm totally transforming my business model. Now, as a bank, we are not even considering having branches anymore. It will be all through platforms. It will be totally different. So I think the industry of finance, because of what's happening even with COVID-19, you're going to see a big transformation. Even, some people were saying it will take, a couple of years. Now it's just showed. It took us a couple of months to get transformed. So some banks will be transforming themselves 10 times faster with now, with technology. So I think for me, it's just booming. And what I believe that is probably the only thing that is probably a problem for most of the industry, I know because this is also my industry, is the talent. How do you actually find the right talent to work in the industry of fintech? Because not a lot of people still today understand technology. They understand finance very well or technology, but not a lot of people can actually understand both.
I think the future of fintech, well, I hope the future of fintech is fun, because I think traditionally finance is not fun, it's not inclusive, and it's not accessible. So I did my MBA. I worked in banking for 2 years, and to this day, when I get, when I remortgage, or I look at the document, I think, this is all a bit complicated. It's clearly not. If I sit down and really focus, I could do it. But if you haven't had the, if you haven't been lucky enough to have that education, how on earth does somebody who's also extremely busy, bringing up a family, doing lots of things, how do you sit down and understand these documents? And actually, every time I have to do something financial, I get really angry, because I think, oh gosh, why am I finding this so difficult? I work in fintech, I've worked in banking, I've had a good education, and I still find this hard. How do other people cope with this? And so I really hope, and it's certainly what we're trying to do at StepLadder, is we want to make finance, and I think the whole of fintech can do this, because we're building from the ground up. I think when you're in traditional finance, you've got all the legacy systems and processes and hundreds of people. It's harder to change things. It's, the analogy of moving a huge boat takes a long time to turn. And I feel like in fintech, we're all in little speedboats, and we can be agile, and we need to make finance understandable and fun. Otherwise, nobody's going to want to work in it, and nobody wants to engage in it. And you do that whole, well, not quite the Bridget Jones thing, but that whole, you get your bank statement and you just put it in the freezer and think, I don't want to think about this. It should be something that we talk about. And at StepLadder, we are making finance collaborative. We're in these circles. We're talking about finance. We're talking about budgeting. We're talking about how much money you've raised to your property deposit. And in previous generations, people have not talked about that. You wouldn't talk about your salary or how much you'd saved. And like, why is that? We talk about everything else, like literally everything else we're happy to talk about now, and share things that, some things probably don't need to be shared. And finance is such an enabler for so many people, for everybody, that if we don't talk about it and educate ourselves in it, we can't feel empowered. And I think that also leads into a huge thing, which I think we'll probably come on to talk about in a bit, is, women working in fintech. Again, when you've got a small company, it's much easier to build a culture that is friendly to everybody, whatever background they're from. Whereas if you are going to join a big bank, it's quite hard if, a lot of the senior workforce are already white men of a certain age. Whatever initiatives you put in place, and there are banks putting, brilliant things in place, it is just much harder. It's going to be a lot slower. So I think both on the consumer side and in terms of careers in fintech, I think the future's really bright for fintech, as long as we're aware of it and we think about this. We don't just sort of slide back into old habits.
Yeah, I find it really interesting how to make fintech more fun, more inclusive, including with a larger organization. What I would add to that is a couple of things. First, I think one big trend that has started already is the embedded fintech. So having fintech services everywhere, not only in the financial services industry. And the second one is around impact financing. We actually see it very well with the two companies you are representing, CFTE, and the impact in people's life and seeing them move and progress in their career thanks to the education that you offer. And then the same thing with StepLadder, providing access to properties for people who wouldn't have access to that otherwise, and providing also all the financial education around it. So yeah, what we see is really more and more fintech focusing on having an impact and impacting people's lives. So yeah, hopefully lots of good things would come from this. What about you, Ryan?
Exactly. What about you, Ryan?
I think for mine, I love this whole notion of responsible technology, because everyone always says how technology is going to transform every industry. But I think there's a real piece, and you see it growing, that instead of us just using technology for the sake of it, actually how we're using technology in a responsible way, especially when it comes to finance, because you're making massive decisions. And you see this with, you can now make payments really quickly in certain countries, but as part of their user experience, they purposely slow it down and they give you a little wheel, because actually if something goes through too quickly, you then get worried about, have I done the right thing here? Has this money transferred to the right person? Blah, blah, blah. So actually building responsible technology means it's not always the most optimal technology. It's about user experience being the key driver in what you build. But that's just a small thing from me. I'm going to pass to Shireen for some of our next questions, because we've got quite a few planned.
Yeah, actually, as we were talking about the future of finance, I'd like to ask both Tram Anh and Lucy about what do you think the future of the diversity and inclusion debate within financial services? What do you think it would look like, or what could help us maybe move things forward?
I think coming back to what I was saying earlier, I think where it's much easier for smaller companies to build a culture from the ground up, where it is friendly and inclusive for everyone. So I think, we've got a real responsibility as fintech founders to make sure the industry is appealing. And the other thing which I talk about a lot, which I think is so important, is this starts from a really, really young age. You get your views shaped very quickly. I'm very lucky to have found my way back into this industry. It's just through connections and serendipity. But as I said at the very beginning, I would have been put off by finance and technology because I just didn't enjoy those things at school. And so I think your views get shaped very, very early on as to what you're going to do. And I think we really need to be aware of that. I'm a very enthusiastic PANK. For those of you that don't know the acronym, it's a professional auntie, no kids. So my sister's got two glorious little girls, my nieces. And so I have suddenly become very interested in the next generation. Having never wanted children myself, I'm suddenly fascinated by children and how they develop and their education. And already with Aviana, who's 4, you can see these ideas she's got about who she is that you get very, very early. And so I'm very passionate about making sure that however young children are, they know they can do anything. And there's things that might sound boring are actually really exciting. And I think that's something that I hope the future holds for me. Maybe when I'm not quite so busy running StepLadder, is I would love to excite and engage really young people in, actually you don't have to be a geek to work in technology. Because unfortunately, when I was at school, that was the thing. The geeks did technology and I didn't want to be a geek. I wanted to have my makeup done and do my hair. And I think we need to just show that all sorts of different people can work in fintech, and it can do so much, as we've said, the impact, the responsibility. And so, I think we need to start young.
Yes, I think the question is what we think of the future of diversity and inclusion debate within the financial services. I think more and more increasing, it will be more and more the case. I think I agree with Lucy, but I think there's when we in the fintech space, I think it's progressing way better than in finance. We want to transform that. I mean, as a female founder, I want to make sure that a lot of people are aware of the opportunities of the jobs available in the fintech space, but in finance. What are the type of jobs? That doesn't mean that you have to be a geek. You can be someone very traditional, but transition yourself into a space. You just need to do your journey, but making sure that those roles and those people who are transformed can be vocal, so that people can really see it, not only for people that are 40, 50, 60, where their jobs are being transformed, but also for the younger generation. So I think it's very important. The diversification of workforce in the fintech industry is still worryingly lacking, but there are companies driving to change this, like CFT. The way that I hire is totally different. I'm trying to get 50% of my team, very diverse, coming from a lot of different countries. I can share with you, some of the tips that I do on the culture and everything, but I now hire totally differently. I used to be in finance. I know their greeds, it's you need to come from diverse, certain type of school and whatsoever. Now I don't look at this anymore. I look at different ways. And I think that the goal at CFT is for a more even gender balance, not only because it's right and fair things to do, but also because it's likely to make a far more successful company. And that in turn should mean a better service to our learner. Having, people from diverse industry, diverse background, diverse views, you can understand your client or your learner far more better than before. And so for me, there are still work to do. When you look at the figure, it's so low. So I think we still need to all work together and collaborate together to make sure that, we bring awareness at these opportunities for more diversity and inclusion.
Tram Anh, as you mentioned it, can you share with us and with the audience some of the tips that you use to hire in a diverse way?
I think it was the case before COVID, and now it's even more, because I don't even know which country they are, because now we are moving everything online. So before, it was I'm hiring someone from London, I'm hiring someone for Singapore, Hong Kong, Abu Dhabi. It was very geographic. Now, I hire people based on not even their degree. I don't know where they are, because we are CFT, so we can provide education. So I know for a fact that they will have proper education in fintech. But what I hire is very much, and that is probably something that I look a lot, and I will just give you an example. It's about, of course, their skill set, what they bring, their knowledge. Of course, they have to, the normal way that you look at the skills, but it's their mindset, the adaptability. And it's just showing now with COVID, you need to you need to adapt very, very fast. It's things that it takes you, where you were working in a bank, it takes probably 3, 6, sometimes a year to launch a project. At CFT, it takes a month. You need to really, really crack it down very quickly and adapt and test and learn. So I think for me, it's adaptability. Your way you adapt to changes will demonstrate your capacity to build a project very, very fast. So I don't look at the university level anymore. I know when I talk to them, if they are curious, if they have the skills. I just hired a young girl recently. I'm not quite sure I remember which degree she's from. I know that she speaks a lot of languages, she's curious, she loves to get into fintech. And I look at if she's driven, the right mindset, ability to learn a lot and to grow, learning by doing, agility. And at CFT, we talked a lot about entrepreneurship. So I think it speaks, our culture is very much, you need to have this mindset of being a builder. So build from scratch, test, learn, fail, and you rebuild and you learn again. And this is not something that perhaps, my colleagues in banking had. they didn't have that mindset, that type of skills that today, this is the type of skills I hire. So it's totally different. This is the thing that we look for the hiring. Also after that, in terms of culture, we have mentoring, we have coaching for the people. We give people opportunity to lead at a very young, after a year. If the person really wants to grow, they can already take charge of a very large scale project with talking with people, important people at a very early stage of their career. This is something that perhaps in a bank, it would take you much longer for you to get that opportunity. And perhaps also this learning culture. We keep learning and learning and learning. Every time I say to my team, think that you know, but also very quickly think that you learn again, because we are continuously into this moment, or it's normal that you don't know because the world is changing. So keep learning and don't be afraid to say, I don't know, because not a lot of people know. You keep learning and learning. Things are in that mode at the moment.
Just picking up on the piece around diversity and inclusion and just adding my own thing in there, I think we are starting to see, and I hope it increases, actually diversity in the socioeconomic background of people who are involved in creating financial products, because finance by nature should be accessible and used by everyone, and it's not at the moment. You got people who are unbanked, but I've seen it before where you have people building a proposition for a certain socioeconomic background, and they're not from that area. So how do they understand what the needs are? So that's just a small thing for me, but I am conscious of time. And for a last question, I want to end with, what's next on the horizon for you both? And I split this into two pieces, actually. So for the company, what's next on the horizon, but then personally as well, is there maybe one skill that you're looking to develop personally over the next year?
I'm laughing because as a coach, I should probably have an answer to that straight away, shouldn't I? I was like, oh, good question. So for the company, we have tried and tested the StepLadder circles, and we have helped many of our members buy their first home. And one of the questions we posed to the team on our offsite 2 weeks ago was, why isn't every first-time buyer using StepLadder? And the reality is because people don't know about us. So if you're listening to this, look us up, join stepladder.com. We're on Instagram and on our website. And we would love to help you. There are 3.5 million first-time buyers in the UK alone. And whilst we have great plans to go international and help people in other countries, first and foremost, let's help UK first-time buyers buy their first home and feel empowered towards their finances. So really, the goals for us at StepLadder are to let the world know that this is the future of finance. This is, you collaborate, you support each other, and you can achieve that dream of owning your own home. I'm stalling now for personally. Oh my gosh, what do I want to learn? I mean, so many things. At the start of lockdown, when I had a little bit more time because I wasn't traveling, I started to learn to play the piano. And then I stopped because I realized it was really hard and I ran out of time. I would love to start doing that. I'm desperate to speak Spanish. My co-founder, Matt, is fluent in Spanish, and one of our investors, BBVA, are based in Spain. And so when we go over, we used to go over, the dinners were in Spanish, and then they'd have to switch to English for me. And I'm so embarrassed because I used to speak Spanish. So languages I love. I want to learn lots of languages. And I also want to learn to play golf. I don't know how that's going to help me professionally. I just really would love to play golf. I think that whole idea of just walking around and thinking, I often have my best ideas when I'm walking. So I love the idea of playing golf.
Just to quickly build on that, I actually purchased a piano at the beginning of lockdown as well to learn. I haven't made enough time to learn it yet. It's on my list.
It's our choice, right? What were you learning to play?
I don't even know. I just wanted to learn. So I'm going to download an app. I've said that I'm going to do that. Anyway, Tram, yourself.
I think I am same. I started piano during the lockdown as well. So I think we could do something there. Yeah, same. I mean, piano is one thing I really, really want to do more. I started, and now I took some time during the lockdown to spend more time on my piano. I love it, and do more and more of this. But I think for CFT, what I want to say is that we want to lead the space in education in fintech. And for me, if there was something that I really want people to know, is that this pandemic is accelerating this digital transformation for all industry, and especially in finance. And adapting to our digital world is now, and therefore it's more critical for most of the people to get the right skills, to get the right knowledge. I'm very vocal. I want to be much more vocal because I think, and in the UK, there were 9 people in furlough who couldn't do their job physically. They couldn't go because it was not digital. Today, the furlough will end soon. I'm worried for the 9 people that could be unemployed and left behind. So please, make sure that you can learn something very quickly to be relevant to you. You have some time, learn about digital. If there is one thing I want to, give my voice, help people to really, get that click moment for them. It's the time now, because opportunities will be there. There will be transformation of industry. There will be massive people looking for talent, but with the right knowledge and the right skills. So if there is something that we could help at CFT, please, CFT.education, our community, we have 75,000 alumni all around the world. They are looking for also talk and exchange. It's the time to collaborate. It's the time to talk to people, to see what's happening, not only in the UK, but in Asia, in US, in Europe. And then you will see what could be the job of tomorrow for you. But please, use this platform, spend a lot of time, and this is one thing that CFT can help, or other platform can help. I just wanted to share that. For me, it's very much the time to think about how to reskill people. So I'm looking for, people who are willing to share also and discuss with us at CFT, very looking for partners to collaborate on that mission of reskilling the nations. For myself, piano, of course, love to learn a lot of things. I think I'm a lifelong learner, so I love learning new things. I'm always looking for things to learn, of course, on finance, on fintech, but that's part of my job. But apart from that, I started painting. So I started buying lots of things to paint. It's just a great, moment to reflect, give me time to think of other things. But painting is a joyful, peaceful also things that I love art. So that's for me.
Just to round it up, Shireen, are you learning piano as well? Are we all doing that?
No, I have one at home, but I'm not using it. I should try. So yeah, thank you all. I think we've learned a lot with you today. It was a very inspiring session. I will just reiterate the call we had earlier about tagging a female expert in fintech, finance, technology. Please tag a female expert to give her a voice and visibility. And over to you, Ryan, for closing.
Yeah, there's not much else to say apart from a massive thank you for everyone joining to talk today on this panel, and for those watching. We wanted to break up our Behind the Hype series with some of these more conversational topics, which may not be educational on finance, but actually something that's impacting the industry. So thank you, and we look forward to people joining us for our next Behind the Hype. Bye.
Thank you so much.